Random House Audio presents Blood and Beauty by Sarah Dunant. Read for you by Edoardo Ballerini. Historical note. By the late 15th century, the map of Europe would show areas broadly recognizable to a modern eye. France, England, Scotland, Spain, and Portugal were on their way to becoming geographical and political entities, run by inherited monarchies. In contrast, Italy was still a set of city-states, making the country vulnerable to invasion from outside. With the exception of the Republic of Venice, most of these states were in the hands of family dynasties. In Milan, the House of Sforza; in Florence, the Medici; in Ferrara, the Este; and in Naples and the south, the Spanish House of Aragon. In the middle of all this sat Rome, a bear pit of various established families jockeying for position, but also, more importantly, the seat of the papacy. While the Pope's earthly territories were modest and often leased out to papal vicars, his influence was immense. As head of the Church, the man himself, usually Italian, controlled a vast web of patronage throughout Europe, and as God's representative on earth, he could and did wield spiritual power for strategic and political ends. With Catholicism reigning supreme and corruption in the Church endemic, it was not uncommon to find popes amassing wealth for themselves and favoring the careers and well-being of those in their families. In some cases, even their own illegitimate children. Such was the situation in the summer of 1492, when the death of Innocent VIII left the papal throne in Rome empty, ready for its new incumbent. Part 1. We have a Pope. He is the age when Aristotle says men are wisest, robust in body, vigorous in mind, perfectly equipped for his new position. Sigismondo de' Conti, Papal Secretary, 1492. Chapter 1. August 11th, 1492. Dawn is a pale bruise rising in the night sky, when from inside the palace a window is flung open and a face appears, its features distorted by the firelight thrown up from the torches beneath. In the piazza below, the soldiers garrisoned to keep the peace have fallen asleep. But they wake fast enough as the voice rings out, "We have a pope!" Inside, the air is sour with the sweat of old flesh. Rome in August is a city of swelter and death. For 5 days, 23 men have been incarcerated within a great Vatican chapel that feels more like a barracks. Each is a figure of status and wealth, accustomed to eating off a silver plate with a dozen servants to answer his every call. Yet here there are no scribes to write letters, and no cooks to prepare banquets. Here, with only a single manservant to dress them, these men eat frugal meals posted through a wooden hatch that snaps shut when the last one is delivered. Daylight slides in from small windows high up in the structure, while at night a host of candles flicker under the barrel-vaulted ceiling of a painted sky and stars, as vast, it seems, as the firmament. They live constantly in each other's company, allowed out only for the formal business of voting or to relieve themselves, and even in the latrines the work continues, negotiation and persuasion over the trickle of aging men's urine. Finally, when they're too tired to talk or need to ask guidance from God, they are free to retire to their cells, a set of makeshift compartments constructed around the edges of the chapel and comprised of a chair, a table, and a raised pallet for sleeping. The austerity, a reminder, no doubt, of the tribulations of aspiring saints. Except these days saints are in short supply, particularly inside the Roman conclave of cardinals. The doors had been bolted on the morning of August 6th. 10 days earlier, after years of chronic infirmity, Pope Innocent VIII had finally given in to the exhaustion of trying to stay alive. Inside their rooms in the Vatican Palace, his son and daughter had waited patiently to be called to his bedside. But his final moments had been reserved for spatting cardinals and doctors. His body was still warm when the stories started wafting like sewer smells through the streets. The wolf pack of ambassadors and diplomats took in great lungfuls, then dispatched their own versions of events in the saddlebags of fast horses across the land. stories of how His Holiness's corpse lay shriveled, despite an empty flagon of blood drained from the veins of Roman street boys on the orders of a Jewish doctor, who had vowed it would save his life. How those same bloodless boys were already feeding the fishes in the Tiber as the doctor fled the city. Meanwhile, across the papal bedclothes, the Pope's favorite, the choleric Cardinal della Rovere, was so busy trading insults with the Vice-Chancellor, Cardinal Rodrigo Borgia, that neither of them actually noticed that His Holiness had stopped breathing. Possibly Innocent had died to get away from the noise, for they had been arguing for years. Of course, in such a web of gossip, each man must choose what he wants to believe, and different rulers enjoy their news, like their meat, more or less well-spiced. While few will question the cat claws of the cardinals, others might wonder about the blood, since it's well known around town that His Holiness's only sustenance for weeks had been milk from a wet nurse installed in an antechamber and paid by the cup. Ah, what a way to go to heaven! Drunk on the taste of mother's milk. As for the conclave that follows, well, the only safe prediction is that prediction is impossible. That and the fact that God's next vicar on earth will be decided as much by bribery and influence as by any saintly qualifications for the job. At the end of the third day, as the exhausted cardinals retire to their cells, Rodrigo Borgia, papal vice-chancellor and Spanish cardinal of Valencia, is sitting appreciating the view. Above the richly painted drapery on the walls of the chapel, new cardinals have been known to try to draw the curtains, is a scene from the life of Moses. Jethro's daughters, young and fresh, the swirl of their hair and the color of their robes singing out even in candlelight. The Sistine Chapel boasts 16 such frescoes, scenes of the life of Christ and Moses, and those with enough influence may choose their cell by its place in the cycle. Lest anyone should mistake his ambition, Cardinal della Rovere is currently sitting under the image of Christ giving St. Peter the keys of the church, while his main rival, Ascanio Sforza, has had to settle for Moses clutching the tablets of stone. Though with a brother who runs the bully state of Milan, some would say that the Sforza cardinal has more on his side than just the commandments. Publicly, Rodrigo Borgia has always been more modest in his aspirations. He has held the post of vice-chancellor through the reign of 5 different pontiffs, a diplomatic feat in itself, and along with a string of benefices, it has turned him into one of the richest and most influential churchmen in Rome. But there is one thing he has not been able to turn to his advantage: his Spanish blood. And so the papal throne itself has eluded him. Until now, perhaps, because after 2 public scrutinies, there is deadlock between the main contenders, which makes his own modest handful of votes a good deal more potent. He murmurs a short prayer to the Virgin Mother, reaches for his cardinal's hat, and pads his way down the marble corridor between the makeshift cells until he finds the one he's looking for. Inside, somewhat drained by the temperature and the politicking, sits a young man with a small Bacchus stomach and a pasty face. At 17, Giovanni de' Medici is the youngest cardinal ever to be appointed to the Sacred College, and he has yet to decide where to put his loyalty. "Vice-Chancellor!" The youth leaps up. The truth is, one can only wrestle with church matters for so long, and his mind has wandered to the creamy breasts of a girl who shared his bed in Pisa when he was studying there. There had been something about her laugh, the smell of her skin, so that when he feels in need of solace, it's her body that he rubs himself against in his mind. "Forgive me, I did not hear you." "On the contrary, it is I who should be forgiven. I disturb you at prayer." "No, not exactly." He offers him the one chair, but the Borgia cardinal brushes it away with a wave of the hand, settling his broad rump on the pallet bed instead. "This will do well enough for me," he says jovially, slapping his fist on the mattress. The young Medici stares at him. While everyone else is wilting under the relentless heat, it's remarkable how this big man remains so sprightly. The candlelight picks out a broad forehead under a thatch of tonsured white hair, a large hooked nose, and full lips over a thick neck. You would not, could not, call Rodrigo Borgia handsome. He has grown too old and stout for that.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?